living the dream, and it all just shattered.
3-year-old Riley Fox was taken from her home in the middle of the night.
It was something out of a movie. In an instant, my life was forever changed.
Truth is a broken heart still beats.
You know, we have followed this case for more than a decade, and we've never been able to get this out of our mind.
My daughter is nowhere to be found. How old is she? 3? Can I have your 3-year-old daughter? No.
Did you have anything to do with the death of your daughter?
Not at all. Not at all.
There was this police interrogation, 14 hours in this room, and then the young father confesses.
It was just unthinkable. Something about that it was like, oh my God. Most of us say, I would never confess to something I didn't do. People would be surprised.
The family believes 100% in Kevin's innocence.
They were so focused on this young father that there were signs all over the neighborhood.
The same night Riley disappeared, there was a burglary at the house right across the street.
How could all of these signs be missed?
That's when things really get intense.
For the first time, we're now hearing from the FBI. They started the case all over again, and only then did we learn what really happened.
The truth is a broken heart still beats.
My first day as jailbird. For one, I should not be here at all. I'm very disappointed in myself. I could hear people saying, "We got the baby Riley killer," kind of singing it. And that is when it all had begun. The journey through the second nightmare of my life. I was the furthest person to do this to Riley, but yet here I am.
What a family. They were living the dream, and it all just shattered.
What do you do, dance? Yeah. All right. Dance it up, baby.
Kevin Fox is your all-American guy. A union job as a painter.
Melissa and Kevin went to high school together. They met after a volleyball game, and she asked him out for a date.
We went to homecoming together, and we went to prom together.
They were high school sweethearts.
He's on the basketball team.
Plans for us, and we had Tyler. And then we got married when he was 3. And had Riley a year after that. He was just such a loving, doting father.
I feel like that's what I was put on this earth to do, honestly. That's my joy in life.
He had an especially close relationship with Riley. The two of them were inseparable.
Watch where you're going. What?
She had this perfect black hair and perfect little round face.
She just light up a room.
Go real fast.
She was like a little pocket rocket.
Run.
Riley was a lot like Melissa. She was a spunky, sassy little girl.
Hey, where you going?
She could be a little princess. She loved to have her nails painted.
She was funny. She was silly. She was just a sweetheart.
Did you go fishing last night?
Yes, She wasn't afraid to get dirty and play. When I think of Riley, I picture her on Kevin's shoulders. She was always a daddy's girl.
Hi.
Hi.
I love you.
She just make your heart melt. Her hugs. Her smile.
A really great portrait of the family emerged at the wedding of Kevin's brother. Riley stole the show. In a little Snow White princess dress, she had her hair whipped up into this confection of curls.
So there was a real long aisle, and she was supposed to take a right-hand turn. And she kept on going up the stairs.
She just wanted to be up in Kevin's arms. She didn't really care about throwing the flowers.
One of the most moving images from that wedding was this photo of the family together. Kevin and Melissa, Tyler and Riley, this beautiful young family. And what became heartbreaking about it is that it was the last photo of them ever as a family together.
The weekend of June 5th is a turning point in the lives of the Fox family. Mom goes out of town on a breast cancer walk.
Got up early Saturday and started the walk. It was a beautiful day. It was hard, it was long, but we had a really good time together.
We were just excited.
Kevin and my brother Tony were going to go to a concert that night, Saturday night, and my mom had the kids.
We went down to Belmont Music Fest, had some beers.
Stayed there for a while. Right afterwards, we went to a burrito place and then went back to Wilmington.
I know that you were partying somewhat. I mean, how big of an issue was alcohol that night?
It wasn't a big issue at all. I had some beers. I was definitely not wasted.
Kev was super adamant about picking the kids up at my mom's, but it was pretty late. I remember looking at the back of the car, and that was the last time I saw Riley.
At 1 a.m., he picks the kids up, brings them home. It's late, so he puts them down in the living room.
Because their beds weren't made, he places Tyler in a chair with an ottoman, and he puts Riley on the couch.
Watched TV, went outside and got my smokes. Had a cigarette on the porch.
He remembers looking around and not seeing anyone out on the streets. It was just dead quiet.
And then I went to bed myself.
You went to bed, the kids were sleeping in the living room. And what's the next thing that you remember?
Tyler waking me up and said that Riley was gone.
At 8 a.m., Tyler came into Kevin's room.
He shook my leg and said, "Dad, Riley's gone." And it really didn't sink in at first.
He gets up. He starts looking frantically all over the house. He thinks that she may be hiding somewhere. He looks in closets. He runs outside. And he calls the neighbor's house.
It was a complete mystery. Nobody had any explanation for where she could have gone, where she would be.
So then I started panicking.
He decides to call the Wilmington Police Department.
After about 30 or 40 minutes, he calls to say that he can't find his child.
I was wondering if you sent an officer over here. My name's Kevin Fox. I woke up this morning and my daughter's nowhere to be found. How old is she? 3? You're kidding me? No. Can I play your 3-year-old daughter? No.
For a 3-year-old to go missing in Wilmington was a big deal. This doesn't happen there.
The worst news any parent could imagine.
Sends chills through me.
Wilmington.
Kevin was super distraught, on edge, crying, scared.
Kevin's wife, Melissa, the day before went to Chicago to go on a breast cancer walk with her friends.
It was beautiful out.
We all start walking. Obviously, everybody's pretty sore. We were like maybe an hour or so in. I decided to call Kevin. He sounded so startled. I knew immediately something was wrong. You could just see the color from her face just kind of drop. He just said, "Riley's gone." And I immediately hit the ground. The phone fell out of my hand. She just kind of collapsed.
We got in the car and drove back to Wilmington. We got off 55 and we turned left, the stop sign, to head back home.
It was something out of a movie. I mean, something you never, in your wildest dreams.
We saw people just combing the woods and the ditches.
People on four-wheelers, people on foot. I feel like the entire town was out looking for her.
I think that's when it hit me that this was serious.
Police and the community mounted a massive manhunt.
The town mobilized immediately.
Neighbors, relatives, friends, and volunteers, numbering in the hundreds, joined in the search.
They had tables set up, tents set up. There were cops all over.
I don't like the circumstances, but it's amazing to see.
I mean, stick around in case they had any questions, and you just feel helpless.
One of the places people began searching was Forsyth Woods. Just a big area of meadow with a creek running through it. A mother-daughter went looking down the creek.
I just felt compelled to come and look for her.
Through the brambles and leaves and twigs.
I can't even explain it. I just had this really bad feeling about this place, and that's why I came here.
The mother caught a glimpse of something and screamed.
It looked like it was a plastic bag, like a grocery bag that was bubbled up in the water. So I walked a little closer, and that's when I saw her. She was face down, and in the creek.
Hi, I love you. Remember, they came together to find one of our own.
Their 3-year-old daughter, Riley, who'd been missing all day, had been found dead.
There was like a lot of commotion, and they came over and grabbed me and Kevin. They put us in separate cop cars. It felt strange. I didn't understand what was going on. When we got to the police station, they just started asking questions. And I was like, is someone going to tell me what's going on?
We walked into the room where they were at, and they looked at us, and we were all crying. My dad said, it's not good. She's dead.
I think I punched the wall a couple times, the black wall. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to believe it.
I remember catching my brother as his knees gave out on him, and everybody just sobbed.
Kevin and Melissa Fox are living a parent's worst nightmare. But on this night, at least, they have the support of an entire community.
There had been a vigil that evening where the community came together.
The community, they're like, there's some predator crazy person running around snatching children.
Today I let my children play out in the backyard, fenced backyard, we're not in the front, and that's not normal.
On this day, a lot is happening. Not only does Riley, and here's the thing, EBY.
They never looked at those shoes.
Hi.
When Riley is found, she has duct tape across her mouth. She has residue on her wrists that would suggest that she may have been duct taped on her wrists. She just had on like a top-type shirt.
Her partially clothed body was soon discovered.
The toddler's drowned body was found in the creek. The child was held under the water, her mouth taped shut.
The forensic examination revealed that Riley Fox was alive at the time she entered the creek. Additionally, the autopsy revealed that Riley Fox suffered non-lethal head injuries and that a sexual assault had taken place.
The police were hoping to get DNA evidence from her clothing or from her body. They did a rape kit, and they did test for blood, bodily fluids not belonging to Riley.
There were about 20 items that were eventually sent to the FBI for forensic testing. The rape kit, the duct tape, Riley's clothes. The problem was there was this enormous backlog at Quantico.
The funeral services were held at St. Rose Catholic Church. 6,000 people showed up.
We all decided that we were going to wear pink
We had ribbons and pins with her picture.
The little girl who loved pink is mourned by family and friends in this small southwest suburban town of Wilmington. Bits of pink were seen throughout the funeral service for Riley Fox.
There were lots of photographers and reporters watching people come in and out of the church.
The police are there too, but to surveil, to observe, to watch for the killer.
There were 2 detectives with video cameras pointed at Kevin Fox.
Within an hour of the funeral ending, police came to my house and they asked if there was any reason that I would believe Kevin to be capable of doing something like this. And before the question even came out of their mouth, my answer was no.
At one point, officers asked if they would mind if they asked Tyler, the son, a few questions.
Tyler Fox is an incredibly important witness. He's the first person who sees that his sister is missing. He should have been interviewed on day 1.
They told me they just wanted to see if they could jog his memory. If he might have remembered something from that night that he might have been afraid to tell Kevin or I.
Advocacy forensic interviewer.
Please have a seat there for me.
The interview was a disaster from minute 1.
Oh, right.
I'm Julianne Himmelstein, and I'm a former federal prosecutor. I had the opportunity to interview thousands of children. I normally do not have a desk in between me and the child. I have a box of crayons and paper.
Where was Riley? On the couch. How did she get on the couch? Dad put her on there.
The interviewer continued to ask him about where the father was, where Kevin was, to the point where he became upset. I mean, sobbing, crying. He was visibly shaken.
He pulls the hood of his sweatshirt over his face. He curls up in his chair.
Did you take Riley outside? No. Did you see Dad carry her out just for a little bit? It's okay. If you did. Did you see Dad take her out for just a little bit? Was he carrying her?
168 times he says his father had nothing to do with Riley's disappearance. 168 times he says he didn't see anything. He was asleep. But they won't take no for an answer.
I need to know who took Riley out of the house. Who did she go with?
A detective was behind a one-way mirror. His form was outlined ghostly, like a specter, watching every move Tyler made, every word he spoke.
Sorry, I don't have any more questions.
She shuts it down finally. The kid is hysterically crying. Obviously, he's in so much pain. It's just very disturbing.
To watch it hurts your stomach.
She made me cry.
I had just lost a child, and then to see the way that they decided to treat the one that I still had, it was really terrible.
After they had questioned Tyler, I knew that was a red flag.
Chad felt that the police were focusing on Kevin. They kept dropping by the house. One officer would come over just to play catch with Tyler.
I said, would you please talk to an attorney? No obligation.
Kevin and I were like, we're fine. What do we need an attorney for?
Kevin and Melissa don't realize this, but there is this dark cloud of suspicion beginning to form over Kevin Fox. One of the things detectives are looking at is this piece of grainy surveilling hours when Riley disappeared, and they believe that whoever's driving that car might be Riley Fox's killer.
We were getting ready to have dinner, and the police called me. They said, Melissa, we need you and Kevin to get here immediately. We've got something to tell you about the case.
The Foxes think this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. But, you know, the old saying, be careful what you wish for.
It had been 4.5 months Fox disappeared, and there's this growing pressure on the chief prosecutor, Jeff Tomczak, for some sort of break in the case. And there's this other dynamic playing out that people recognize, which is that he was in the fight of his political life. I mean, Election Day was a week away.
Jeff Tomczak wants to be reelected. He's got a tough opponent. The race is tight.
We have the toughest prosecutor's office in Illinois. That's what I've done for Will County, and that's what I'm proud to continue to do for the next 4 years.
Tomczak seemed to be in an increasingly losing battle for the state's attorney's race.
There are some who begin to wonder, would a high-profile arrest help his campaign?
On October 26th, police contacted Kevin and Melissa. There had been developments in the case.
And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. They found the person. Like, we're gonna know what happened.
It's the evening. Kevin's been working since 4:30 that morning. But of course, he and Melissa want to know what happened to their little girl. They go down to the police station.
And then when they get there, they immediately separate them.
They took her down a hallway, and they took me. It was like a room up on the stage. You walk up the stairs, and then it was real small room.
It's a little tiny room more comparable to a cell, and they have him pinned back in the corner of the room.
Most interrogation rooms inside police stations are specially designed. No windows, no clock. Nothing to connect the suspect to the outside world.
They have the capacity to videotape the entire interrogation, but they don't.
I'm CEO of Evidence Video. We've been asked to do a recreation based on the testimony of Kevin Fox.
I hired actors, and I actually had Kevin involved in it, and we recreated the whole...
We are recreating the interrogation based on the best of your recollection.
Sit down over there. Scott told me to sit down, and then they were asking me about the night, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he looked at me and said, "We have reason to believe that you killed Riley."
Tell us the truth.
I didn't
kill
Riley.
Sit your ass down.
You. I freaked out. I stood up and started pointing in his face, saying, I didn't do this. I took a couple steps, and he's like, "Sit your ass down."
Sit your ass down.
Well, what he said, he was just berated, barraged, yelling, swearing, being threatened.
I didn't kill my daughter.
They said they just wore him down psychologically, emotionally, just tag teaming him left and right, left and right, left and right.
Kevin says detectives then offer him a lie detector test, and he says one of the things they tell him is that this test could actually prove that he wasn't involved in his daughter's death.
They asked you, will you take a polygraph test?
They kept on saying that they knew I'd flunked the polygraph test.
And so you said, I'll take it.
It was kind of like they're egging me on.
The test says you killed Riley. $10,000 piece of equipment says you killed your daughter.
I did not kill my daughter.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
Now, this is a commonly used ruse during police interrogation. Get the suspect to take a lie detector test, then tell them they failed it. As part of that process of breaking them down, of making them feel hopeless.
I was just shocked. I couldn't have failed it.
That's when things really get intense. The police bring Melissa into Kevin.
Kevin failed the test. Means he killed your daughter.
I don't believe that at all. I think they were really upset that second I let Kevin know. I don't believe them. It's okay. They didn't want me anywhere near him.
In that moment, Detective Ed Hayes, according to a lawsuit later filed, blew up.
Liar, murder.
And got right in Melissa's face and said,
"You killed your daughter, and he's a liar."
The Will County Sheriff's Office says that Kevin's account of this interrogation is exaggerated, that it's not accurate. They deny, ever trying to intimidate or threaten him. And Sergeant Hayes says that he never yelled at Melissa.
Kevin says the police came to him during his interrogation and said, "Look, either you're this cold-blooded baby killer, in which case it's life in prison, or if you tell us that this was a result of some accident, things will be easier. for you. That's how they get Kevin talking. Just tell us about an accident.
So keep in mind, he'd been up since 4:30 that morning. He'd gone to work. Now he's in the middle of this 14
theory that he adopts, in which Riley is killed accidentally, and he then stages it to look like a murder.
Kevin had gotten up in the middle of the night, opened the bathroom door, struck her in the head with this door, knocked her out.
And he didn't know what to do. So then he said, well, he would make it look like a stranger had come in and done this, stages, if you will, a sexual assault, and then takes her to the creek and drowns her.
I mean, that is an utterly preposterous story.
He says, I thought everybody would see it as crazy. He said, I really thought that they would understand that this couldn't possibly have happened.
Did you have anything to do with the death of your daughter?
Not at all. Not at all.
A lot of people will want to know, if you didn't kill Riley, how do you possibly confess to it?
Say you were trapped in a burning room, and there was only one door, and the fire was just flaming around you.
So you looked at this as your only way out?
It was my only way out.
He thought this was his only way out.
Well, can you tell me another way out? What would you do?
For an all-night interrogation, police and prosecutors gathered to announce Kevin Fox had confessed.
Mr. Fox gave a statement that has led detectives to believe that he killed his daughter after placing her in a nearby creek.
These detectives, I want to say, and it's their instincts. Their investigative instincts that led to this statement coming down.
It was just unthinkable. A father would do this to his own 3-year-old girl, his daughter, a daughter that he adored. Oh my God.
A young girl's father now accused of a brutal crime that stunned this rural community.
We were sitting there saying to ourselves, did we get fooled by this guy? Was that an act?
He gets arrested. He gets taken to the Will County Jail and booked.
First-degree murder in connection with the death of his 3-year-old daughter.
They brought me to the booking room, and the first thing I heard, one of the guards said, hey, we got the baby Riley killer, and I kind of looked around because I wanted to see him too, and I realized she was talking to me.
What about the issue of this being politically motivated? You know, this is about your upcoming election.
It's just crazy. I mean, the arrest of the defendant was caused by his actions himself.
Prosecutors announced they plan to seek the death penalty against Kevin Fox. The judge set bond at $25 million.
I wasn't going to let my brother...
What I was in there for is the worst possible thing you could be in jail for. The worst. Everyone hated me.
You kept this diary fearful that you might not survive the ordeal?
Absolutely. With all the people that were threatening me, I thought, that my family would get it if I was killed.
November 15th. What a restless night. Days in here go by so slow that your mind starts thinking about things that I do not need to be thinking about if I'm going to make it through this.
To lose my daughter and then to lose my entire family 5 months later, it was very hard.
November 25th. When I get out, I will definitely appreciate life more than I ever have. Love is a powerful thing, and the Lord sees my love for my family, so He will reunite us. I know He will.
Well, I thought about killing myself a couple times, but I knew I'd get out one day and be with my family again.
Riley Fox's murder shocked the small town of Wilmington. It united residents together. Now, Kevin Fox's arrest has divided Wilmington, some residents feeling betrayed.
There were definitely a lot of people who turned on the family at that point.
To find out all the stuff we've been finding out, that's terrible. How can somebody even do that? Especially to their own child.
We went from being the victims of the crime and having everybody's sympathy to all of a sudden we were bad people.
we're at a location that convinced me that Kevin's confession was untrue, that it was false.
The first thing Zellner did was begin to reenact the crime, to see if it comported with the way detectives were describing it.
They got out a bag that weighed 40 pounds, the same that Riley weighed at the time.
Police reportedly say Kevin Fox confessed to leaving his daughter's body just under a bridge, but Fox's attorneys say that's impossible because the current here isn't strong enough to have carried the girl a quarter-mile downstream to where she was found.
Then Zellner and her investigators went to the house, looking at the bathroom door.
The bathroom door was a hollow core door, which would never have caused any kind of serious damage, even if he had struck her while she was sitting on the toilet.
The state's attorney should have checked all of that out, because a confession has to be corroborated.
You know, in spite of her long list of courtroom victories, Kathleen enough to convince a jury to convict him.
I was extremely worried about what I got myself into. No matter how good an attorney I am, and I actually think I'm quite a good attorney, he was going to be convicted.
So as you're sitting there with your client, what are you thinking are his chances?
I felt like I was looking at a dead man.
Zellner is convinced that the only way Kevin Fox can avoid a guilty verdict and can avoid the death penalty now is DNA.
While Zellner's team continued to try to poke holes in the story offered by investigators, Zellner discovered that there actually was DNA evidence.
There was saliva found in the rape kit.
DNA samples collected from the body of Fox's daughter, 3-year-old Riley.
DNA evidence was available in the murder of Riley Fox last June, but it required sophisticated testing.
It was the type of DNA that you couldn't absolutely 100% say it matches person A or person B, but you could use it to eliminate people.
In court today, his attorney, in an unusual agreement with prosecutors, moved to allow an outside lab to do sophisticated DNA testing. That could either implicate or exonerate Fox.
Do you remember the day she came to give you the news?
She said that we got the test results back for the DNA, and I just collapsed.
The truth is a broken heart still beats.
You know, we have followed this case for more than a decade, and we've never been able to get this out of our mind.
He just said Riley's gone. And I immediately hit the ground. The phone fell out of my hand.
Their 3-year-old daughter, Riley, who'd been missing all day, had been found dead.
There was this police interrogation, and then the young father confesses.
Kevin Fox was questioned for 14 and a half hours. We see this commonly in false confession cases.
Mr. Tom, David Muir with ABC News. We'd like to talk to you about the Riley Fox case.
Actually, I have court this morning.
They were so focused on this young father that there were signs all over the neighborhood. How could all of these signs be missed?
One of the things that they found was a pair of shoes.
That was something that was never...
FBI, they started the case all over again.
We're not going to show your face, all right?
And only then did we learn what really happened.
I haven't seen these boxes, I would say, for probably 10 years.
3-year-old Riley Fox was taken from her home in the middle of the night.
It brings back a lot of memories about the criminal case, the civil case, everything. It's just such an incredible story.
After an all-night interrogation, police and prosecutors gathered to announce Kevin Fox had confessed.
most of us say, I would never confess to something I didn't do. People would be surprised.
Police interrogation unfolds in 2 stages. The first stage is about reducing a suspect to hopelessness.
I denied the whole thing all night and said I didn't do it, and they would not believe me.
They'd go back and forth between promising and threatening. It's a classic case of a false confession.
When you're done filling this out, you don't admit you murdered your daughter, you're getting 30 years to life.
Kevin and Melissa agree to actually reenact the interrogation as best as they could remember what it was like inside that room.
Listen to me. You killed your daughter. Child killer.
The Will County Sheriff's Department, they dispute what Kevin Fox said went down in there.
I didn't kill my daughter, though.
Yes, you did.
Kevin Fox was questioned for 14 and a half hours. We see this commonly in false confession cases. That's not by accident, and only adds to the suspect's desire to get out of that room.
I was exhausted. I had guys yelling at me, saying I was going to get raped.
They told him, I know people in prison that will rape you every day.
The detectives and that sergeant, they deny that they ever threatened Kevin Fox during that interrogation. And there was something else that they denied. They denied ever showing Kevin a crime scene photo of his dead daughter.
They showed me the picture of Riley in the creek, dead, bound, mud on her face. That was just the breaking point.
The fact that he had to actually see it just breaks my heart for him.
On until another ruse happens during this interrogation. An officer rushes in and says, I've just spoken with one of the prosecutors.
It's just going to be like a misdemeanor, involuntary manslaughter. You can get out on bond. Everything will be okay.
If you say that you did it, they can work out a deal for you.
Those are the words that led him to give the statement he gave.
Some of the sheriff's investigators actually acknowledged that they did discuss involuntary manslaughter with Kevin Fox. They said they made no promises.
By the time Kevin Fox confessed, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. He'd been awake for more than 20 hours.
I pretty much went along with their story to get out of there.
Now police say Fox has given a videotaped statement implicating himself.
These are really powerful psychological tactics. They are very good at getting confessions from guilty people. But they are so powerful that they can also cause the innocent to confess.
I would never in a million years prosecute a case with only one piece of evidence, and that one piece of evidence being a confession. I need confession plus DNA, confession plus fingerprint analysis, a whole array of other bits and pieces of evidence to corroborate the confession.
A confession isn't magic. It's a piece of evidence, just like any other piece of evidence. You have to test it against what you know, against what the facts tell you happened in this case.
It's the worst hand you can be dealt as a defense attorney, because jurors are going to convict somebody who's confessed to something unless you've got DNA evidence.
Remember something with Kathleen Zellner. DNA is how she has been able to free people, to get them exonerated.
They did get some genetic material from Riley.
The DNA was collected 2 days after the toddler's body was found in a creek near Wilmington.
The problem is, 5 months later, it still hadn't been analyzed.
In November then, Jim Glasgow defeated Jeff Tomczak and took over the state's attorney's office.
After Glasgow came in, there was that DNA evidence that had been sent to the FBI and been sitting there, was recalled. They said, send it back to us. That DNA evidence was sent out to a private lab.
They're putting their hopes to the DNA test, hoping they might prove his innocence before the case ever goes to trial.
He knows he's innocent. I know he's innocent. The answers, like we say, lie in the...
It's Kevin. It was game over. He was gonna be on death row.
It makes all the difference. It makes all the difference.
Test results arrived last night. The DNA did not match Kevin Fox's.
They came back and said, this is not his DNA. We can't tell you whose it is, but we can tell you it's not his.
I never expected the DNA result to come back in this fashion. We were shocked at the result.
Glasgow sees this. To his credit, does the right thing.
I said, well, there's one thing that's certain to me. I can't prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. And the moment that I reach that decision, I cannot continue to prosecute that person.
And that's when he said to me, I'm going to release him tomorrow.
Kevin Fox is free after prosecutors concede there is now considerable doubt about his guilt.
Prosecutors dropped all charges against the Wilmington father.
It was a nightmare, and I don't want to relive it right now. I don't want to. I'm happy.
If you want to take away one thought in this case, is do the test before you make the arrest.
Even after I got out of jail, I still had people coming up to me and saying I was a child killer, a child molester, and threatening to shoot me and my dog.
This was after the DNA?
After the DNA, after I got out of jail.
Kevin Fox is ruled out. This is a game changer. Now you have to refocus this investigation. The DNA proves that you didn't do it. But then the question becomes, who did? And then the other question becomes, what else may have gotten missed, left out?
Witnesses reported seeing a strange red car parked right in front of the Foxen home.
When we found out that they had the killer's shoes in evidence and had never pursued that, it's like, wow, all this time right there.
Attorney Kathleen Zellner has filed a civil rights lawsuit.
Is suing county sheriff detectives.
Kathleen Zellner files a federal lawsuit accusing the Will County Sheriff's Department and the Will County prosecutor of wrongful arrest.
I felt like the civil trial was our way of shedding light on what they had done.
It was to retain my reputation, to get my story out there, to tell the truth.
Will County detectives on trial insist that they didn't manipulate, rush to judgment, or coerce a confession. Their attorney saying,
they believe that they did the right thing. I believe that they did in their heart what was right. To this day, I do.
Attorney Kathleen Zellner told jurors detectives focused on Fox, ignoring other evidence.
One key thing they don't do is look at burglaries.
A neighbor across the street from the Foxes, she said that she'd had an attempted burglary.
They told us the whole time that there was no connection at all.
They didn't really investigate that. That will be a momentous mistake down the road.
One of the reasons that the police stated that they suspected Kevin was they found no sign of forcible entry. In fact, the back door the lock was broken and couldn't be locked.
The two of you sat across from me and said there must have been an intruder.
We knew there had to have been.
And we had said from day one that someone went in the back door and then took her and went out the front door.
I talked to one of our lieutenants in charge of investigation who advised that it doesn't appear to be any forced entry.
If I heard one more time from Will County that there was no forced entry, I think I was going to snap. You don't have to force yourself into a door that's already broken.
Kathleen Zellner believes that these detectives are obsessed with a piece of security video from a local gas station that shows a vehicle going by at about the time that Riley Fox disappears. And she says detectives are convinced that that could be Kevin Fox's Ford Escape driving past that gas station. Did it look like his car?
No, it did not. You would have to have the license plate or a very clear picture of his face to ever have that hold up in court.
Kathleen Zellner and her investigators believe that detectives are so focused on this vehicle that had been seen driving past that gas station, that piece of security video, that they actually overlooked what they'd been told about in that neighborhood. This is suspicious other car, a red Chevy Beretta.
I happened to look down there and I did see a red car. I'd never seen it there before.
They said they didn't think that had anything to do with it.
And you'll remember that DNA that had been sent to the crime lab to be tested, and it wasn't actually even tested until months after Kevin Fox had been arrested. Well, suddenly at trial, there's another explanation as to why so much time had gone by.
Someone from the Will County Sheriff's Department contacted Quantico.
Somebody calls the FBI and says, stop testing the DNA. That infuriates me. How dare you?
The Will County investigator, the sergeant who says he called that lab, says it was all a misunderstanding. He says that he called them and told them to stop testing for DNA only on some of the items, not all of them.
Which, again, is another sign that they are so certain to continue to pursue other avenues.
And I finally broke him down.
She was on that case and she wanted to solve it and just kept pushing. When you do that, things will break your way, out of the blue.
They came across a young lady who told them that she had a suspicion this person might have been involved.
I just had a bad feeling about him, and I didn't know who to tell.
Daughter Riley, the investigation essentially went back to square one.
Since it's not him, because the DNA rules him out, says he's not the person. Who is? Now you have to go back over the evidence and figure out who did this. Because you know it isn't Kevin Fox.
Authorities say they have no strong new leads in the search for Riley's killer.
The Fox family still offers a $100,000 reward for information that leads to the killer's conviction.
To my daughter's killer, you will be caught, no matter how long it takes.
In 2009, I just got to the point where I said, we've got to do something drastic here, so I asked the FBI if they would get involved.
The Riley Fox case is, to me, the most important case of my career. When I see this little child that was just so beautiful and rambunctious, there's no way you can't want justice for this child.
They took 30 agents and descended on Wilmington and did a massive amount of interviews.
Just kind of saturate the area with agents and task force officers and just to conduct a boatload of interviews and see what we could find.
They came across a young lady who told them that she had a suspicion but had no reason other than gut feeling this person might have been involved in the murder.
We are wrong. So the FBI talks to this woman, and then 2020 ends up talking to her as well. She has since died, but at the time she agreed to do the interview as long as we blurred her face.
We're not going to show your face, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
When Riley Fox was abducted and killed, this woman lived right there in Wilmington, right down the street, and she actually remembers that her family helped in the search effort the day of Riley's disappearance.
She was a little hesitant to speak with us at first. Then we identified who we were, why we were there, and she stepped outside to talk to us outside her house. She told us about a guy that she was having a relationship with who had since left the neighborhood.
I just had a bad feeling about him. And I didn't know who to tell, so when the FBI came in...
Scott Eby.
A guy by the name of Scott Wayne Eby.
You knew a guy named Scott Eby, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is Scott Eby?
An ex-boyfriend of mine.
Just describe him for me. Tell me what kind of person he is.
A creep.
The summer that Riley Fox disappeared, Scott Wayne Eby was 33 years old. He'd been married, in and out of prison. He was living right there in Wilmington with his mother. And it turns out he was living with her 1 mile from the Fox family home.
They'd had a very peculiar conversation when they were out for a walk together, walking through Riley's garden.
And he had made some comment that left her chilled.
I was saying, I can't believe somebody did that to that sweet little girl. And he said, oh, that was such a shame, wasn't it? And the way he said it was like cold, like he didn't mean it.
She told us that he had since moved out of town, and she knew he was incarcerated for a sexual assault of a family member.
Scott Eby was 5 hours away in prison in southern Illinois. I asked Jeremy, hey, let's go ahead and try to get this guy interviewed.
It was way in the southern portion of the state. It was a hike.
In all honesty, he was someone I was just going to check off my list.
He had no idea we were coming. We kind of showed up out of nowhere, and that was intentional.
He was very respectful, very responsive to our questions, didn't hesitate, didn't seem nervous.
He was just trying to kind of collect his thoughts as to why in the world the FBI is here to talk to me, and what I should do about that.
He said he had heard about the case, but other than that, there wasn't really anything that he could tell us or help us with.
He did remember where he was that day, which makes him no different than anybody else that we talked to, really.
I shook his hand, and we left. And as we were walking from the building to the car, I looked at Jeremy and I said, "That is the clammiest hand I have ever shaken."
When they left, he got on the phone with his mother on a recorded call.
Hello, you have a prepaid call from
Scott Eby,
an inmate at Lawrence Correctional Center.
Scott Eby contacted his mother to tell her that he wanted to see her immediately. He has something to tell her.
Hello?
What's the matter?
Mom, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're doing it. Come down here and see me as soon as you can.
We went to interview the mom, Scott Eby's mom.
2020 obtained a recording of an FBI interview with Scott Eby's mother.
I'm here with Sharon Eby and Special Agent Delory Warren, Special Agent Jeremy Rezar.
He told me that I needed to get down to the prison to see him immediately.
I'm fixing to spend the rest of my life in penitentiary, Mom.
You killed somebody?
You gotta come down here, Mom, so I can give you a hug and a kiss one last time, please.
And he said that he did something horribly wrong.
Something really bad.
Yes, it's something really bad.
I drove down there, and when he came in, he hugged me, and he said, "Remember the little Riley girl?"
All of a sudden, my phone started ringing off the hook from the prison where Scott Eby is in.
Scott Eby had attempted to commit suicide.
And he has written a letter
that was actually addressed to the FBI agents who had spoken with him.
This is a confession to murder with 2 exclamation points at the end.
And then that started a succession of admissions, and finally a videotaped confession.
Go ahead and have a seat. You're no dummy, so you know there's some people here that's going to talk to you, okay?
We knew that we needed to get down there and interview him to do the follow-up interview based upon everything that we'd learned at this point.
While we ask you any questions, you must understand your rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to
As we do with any other interview, if he's in custody at the time, we read him his Miranda rights, and he immediately advised us that he wanted an attorney.
Knowing that you have those rights, want to talk to us? I think I'd rather have a lawyer. Alright. That's certainly your decision.
I'll candidly tell you some frustration. It was obviously our hope to talk to him, but nevertheless, both of us were completely understanding of the fact that we could not talk to him at that point.
That's your decision. That's certainly your right. Okay.
So we left the room, and of course, very disappointed.
Thanks for your time, Scott. And
Good luck to you.
Yeah, good luck to you, man. All right.
About 75 seconds later, he looked up at the camera, and as it was still running, and said that he had changed his mind.
Alright, if you guys can hear this, I've changed my mind. I'll talk to you.
And we went back in, and Scott Eby basically told us the story from beginning to end as he wrote in the letter.
I really don't remember much of that evening. I mean, I remember drinking a lot
At that night, he advised that he had been drinking and using cocaine and looking for homes to burglarize.
I guess I got it into my head to go rob people.
He told us that he got a thrill out of robbing homes.
That's what I've been to the penitentiary for several times and stuff, you know what I mean? I'd get drunk and I'd go and commit residential burglaries and stuff.
He goes on to reveal several other things that the police missed.
I drove around a little bit, I think. I don't remember how I ended up in that neighborhood or whatever, but I did. And I started walking around from house to house and checking doors and windows and stuff like that, you know, easy access into somebody's house.
The same night Riley disappeared, there was a burglary at the house right across the street. It turned out that Evie was the person who had burglarized the home across the street.
I discovered the old lady's house a few doors down from Riley's. I cut the screen door, walked through the lady's house, seen her sleeping inside her bedroom, went into her wallet, found $40 inside her wallet. She didn't have anything else really to steal, you know what I mean? So I left out of her house.
Authorities say that Eby said he walked from that neighbor's house right to the back door of the Fox home, and that door, you'll remember, that broken lock.
When he got to the Fox's house, he tried the back door and he said it was open, unlocked.
So he didn't have to break in. He just walked in.
Went into the living room, and that's where the babies were sleeping on the couch.
Scott Eby said he entered their home and didn't find anything of value to steal. And that's when he saw the children sleeping in the family room and had a sudden urge to take Riley.
They didn't have nothing to steal. I was getting ready to leave and I looked back and I don't know, for some reason I just, I fixated on that little girl. Once I decided that I was gonna go through with her or whatever, I went and got my car and I backed it into the Fox's driveway.
Remember, Kathleen Zellner said detectives were so focused on that one vehicle that they saw in that security video driving past that gas station, even though witnesses in the neighborhood had mentioned another car, this red Chevy Beretta. And then Scott Eby's mother eventually describes the car that she says her son was driving that night.
Do you remember what kind of car he had at the time?
He was driving a red Beretta. Chevy.
I picked her up and I put my hand over her mouth.
I don't know that I've ever seen a horror movie as excruciatingly evil as his confession.
I almost put her right back down, you know, walked out of the house. Yeah. And I wish to God I would have. I do.
He blames the Foxes for not having enough for him to steal, so he steals their daughter, the most precious thing that they have.
We took her from the house, put her into the trunk of his car.
Closed the lid and then got in the car and left.
He had been wearing a bandana to cover his face, and it came down, and Riley saw him.
And I realized that my mask is no longer on my face, and I really panicked.
Hi. I love you.
One of the things that Melissa Fox always said was that she hoped that when they found Riley's real killer, that it would provide closure for the family. But what it did was it opened a whole new chapter of pain when they realized what had happened to their little girl.
I needed to know what happened to her and what she went through, but now it's kind of like torture. Now it's like I'm torturing myself with those details.
You walked in to grab her and she was on the couch?
Yes.
Did she have a blanket or anything over her? How was she kind of situated?
No, I can't recall exactly. She was laying, if you're facing the couch, she's laying on this end of the couch.
As Evie keeps talking, he describes how he put Riley Fox in the even more mistakes in the investigation.
Eventually, we found out she was sexually assaulted in that bathroom that was on that property. To our knowledge, that had never been processed for evidence.
He had been wearing a bandana to cover his face, and then it came down, and then Riley saw him.
She's looking directly at my face and stuff, and I realize that my mask is no longer on my face. And then I really panic.
He made that leap from sexually assaulting her to this warped idea in his head that he needed to take her life at that point. I can't fathom how somebody can do that.
And this is evidently the last thing she says to him, I want my daddy, I want my daddy.
The man who was accused of killing her was the man she was crying out to in her last moments.
He decided to take her and drown her in the nearby river.
And Scott Eby admits to leaving clues at the scene of that horrific crime. His shoes, his size 12 sneakers.
One of the things that they found and didn't realize the critical importance of it was a pair of shoes.
They were white, all white, high tops. I think they were Rydell's. I threw the shoes into the river because I had left shoe prints on the muddy bank. And I got rid of the shoes, which was stupid, you know.
And you'll remember, right back to the very beginning, the shoe, inside it, the letters EBY.
It wasn't super clear, but you could see what looked like an E, a B, and a Y on the inside of the tongue, that it was handwritten.
His last name.
To tell you the truth, I expected somebody to be coming talking to me a long time ago because it had my last name printed on the tongue of the shoe.
The only thing I ever heard about a shoe, they wanted to know what size shoe Kevin wore. And their sizes didn't match the size of that shoe, and we never heard about a shoe again because it didn't fit their crime.
That was something that was never followed up on. Very much like the burglary at the house across the street. And so when we found out about that as a report, we were like, oh my God. It was just like, are you kidding me?
You've now learned that there was a suicide call at this man's house.
And Wilmington police were at his house.
One of the things in looking back at this case all these years later, it's incredible when you realize that Scott Eby, who killed Riley Fox, he had an encounter with Wilmington police.
Oxycodone. I swallowed them. Hoping to kill myself.
Scott Eby said he attempted suicide the day that he killed her, later that day.
Next thing I remember, police officer was knocking on my door. I actually ended up vomiting right there in front of him and stuff.
The very day of the murder, Wilmington police, not the Wills County Sheriff's Office, visited Scott Eby's home because they had been told by a friend of his that he had threatened to commit suicide.
I asked him, I was like, what's up with that little girl and stuff? Did you find her?
So the day Riley Fox disappears, they're called to his house.
Correct.
On a suicide attempt.
Right.
And had they run his name through a system, they would have seen a criminal history.
Yes, and he has all the red flags that they should have picked up on, from the burglary convictions to the suicide attempts to the inquiries about Riley. I mean, he did everything but set a siren off at his house. I'm the guy.
I can forgive a mistake. People are human. I get that. But they almost completely ruined our chances of ever knowing what happened to our daughter. And so I hate them for that.
For almost 6 years, you thought this was going to be like a celebration day, and it feels quite the opposite.
He stole something very important from the world.
She is gone. And there's not this amazing girl here anymore, but there's disgusting people like him here. That's disappointing.
So you have to remember, Kevin and Melissa Fox are now about to be face to face with the man who killed their daughter and who was going to allow the daughter's father to be sent away and face the death penalty himself.
I'm sad that that was the last face that she saw. He's scary. He's terrifying.
I just bring fresh flowers every time I come.
I focus more on her birthday, on March 31st. I like to think more about the day she was given.
For Riley, if you had a moment to say, we did it. We never gave up.
But yeah, it was nice going there and putting some roses on her stone and saying that it was over and then I'd see her sometime in the future.
Good afternoon. About a half an hour ago, I appeared before the Honorable Gerald Kinney, the Chief Judge of Will County, and obtained a warrant for the arrest of Scott Eby.
Scott Eby pleaded guilty in 2010, and as he was about to be sentenced to life without parole, Kevin and Melissa Fox came face to face with their daughter's killer in that courtroom.
I came to face you so you would know how important standing up for Riley was to me. She was defenseless that night, and that makes you a coward and a monster.
He was given a life sentence, and he pled guilty to multiple counts of murder and aggravated criminal sexual assault.
It ensured that he would be behind bars for the rest of his life.
Melissa was unwavering in her support for Kevin, even as members of the community began to turn against them. They had another daughter together after all of this, Tegan, but we always wondered, how much can a marriage actually take?
Careful. It just was too much for our marriage to withhold, I guess.
Melissa's a remarkably courageous, resilient person who had the character to stick with him because she knew he was innocent. It was an extraordinary story of tragedy, but redemption.
Both Kevin and Melissa would go on to find new love, new lives.
Kevin and I are both happy and healthy. We're both remarried and have amazing families.
The truth of the matter is, they'll never get their daughter back. The little girl who was the flower girl at her uncle's wedding ran down that aisle and right into the arms of her father. She had an unmistakable bond with her father, whose family never gave up on him, and a family that will never forget its little girl.
You got sick? Yeah. It will forever be devastating, and I'll forever have a hole in my heart. But I think because I have suffered such great loss, I see the world in the blessings and the love that I have in such a different way.
Hi.